So I guess we'll get started and people can wander in and filter in. And just to let you know, this is all being recorded for both HD Reach and I'm doing it for my channel. So you're not on camera, but if you ask questions, it's going to end up on the video. So, okay. Well, I'm Jeff Marsocci, known as the Plain English Attorney. We're just going to start out with a couple of cases that I've been working on. One of them very lately, in fact, we're still working on it, but one from several years ago, a woman came into the office. She wanted to get things set up for her father because he was already in a care facility. It was a memory group. It wasn't HD. It was just kind of dementia. It was getting worse. And she wanted to make sure that we were doing everything right and not losing anything more than possible, because we were at a point where we're probably going to end up with, okay, Medicaid may be needed because it would reach that skill level of nursing care. And I said, well, there's a lot we can do based on everything that you said your father has and what his condition is, and we're getting there medically, but I need to talk to your father. And I said, look, we have a very thorough, durable general power of attorney, and it's going to let your daughter handle setting this stuff up to preserve as much as possible. And I explained all of it to him, and he said, well, that's certainly something to consider. And I said, okay, you're just so we're clear, here's what this is costing. Here's the projections. You're going to be out of money in this amount of time. This is something we should kind of jump on. And he said, that's certainly something to consider. I said, okay, I just want to make sure, you know, we can't do anything until we get to this. I explained what the power of attorney was, and he said, well, that's certainly something to consider. And I knew right then, he didn't even have that capacity to execute a power of attorney document. And it was too late. And so I had to refer to an attorney that actually goes and gets guardianship. And now suddenly that process was going to be in front of a court. Everything had to be, I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be using the microphone for that. Everything is going to have to be accounted for. Every single expenditure has to be approved by the court. Everything has to be documented, and it just became this whole big thing. Plus, it was taking away his autonomy. He wouldn't have a choice at that point, and that would have been it. Let's take a look at the absolute other end of that spectrum with the client that I'm still working on. I've been working with her and her daughter for many, many years because dementia ran in the family, and she was starting to get a little bit of short-term memory loss. And the daughter said, we need to do something. So I met with both of them. We set up a revocable living trust. We set up the documents. Who do you want handling things for you? And it worked well. And it was about 3 years later, the short-term memory was getting a little bit worse. It's like, okay, well, let's have the discussion. Where's the point of handing it off so it doesn't have to be taking away the keys? It's mom understanding. And then recently, I talked with her and the daughter, and for the first time, her son, who was the backup person in charge of everything, we had them all on a Zoom. Apparently, mom had been scammed out of $12,000. And it was okay. This is time. We set up irrevocable trusts to potentially have Medicaid take over. Everything was in the revocable trust. Some things would get shifted. The whole plan was set up ahead of time, and mom acknowledged, yeah, I'm going to give up my authority as the trustee so my daughter can take over and just make sure the bills were being taken care of. And she should have her own checking account outside with a couple of $1,000s and a credit card with a couple of $1,000. So she still had some autonomy. She was still able to do things and live her life. But this handoff meant the major assets were already protected. So those are the two situations that we're really talking about. And so when it comes to something like Huntington's disease, there is that phase that a lot of people end up in where they're not making the best financial decisions, but they are certainly not incompetent under the law. So what can we do to get things set up the right way so that it's not a situation where we do have to take away the keys? They're being handed off, but maybe not all the keys even at once. All right, so let's talk a little bit about competency and what these different competencies are, because it's not an all or nothing. And by the way, if anybody has any questions along the way, please just raise your hand. I'm happy to take questions, whatever's going to be best to get you the information that you want. All right, so here are the kind of different levels of capacity. Now, for most people, okay, everything's good. You can make your own decisions. Maybe you're making smart decisions, maybe you're not. I don't know how many people here have heard George Carlin, that comedian? Yeah, okay. One of his things was, hey, I want you to think about just how stupid the average person is, and then realize 50% of the population is more dumb than that. Okay, but it's not an issue where there's, something that's impeding their cognitive ability. Now, this is the part that a lot of people don't really know about. You can have documents in place where under certain conditions, it will make sure that someone else can step in, but you're not actually necessarily incapacitated or incompetent under the law. And now we kind of get here into this red zone. This is when legally, with the evidence presented, a judge can remove your ability to make your own decisions and put someone else in charge. And now suddenly there's a whole court system surrounding it to, quote, protect you. How many people here have dealt with handling the inventories and stuff for a guardianship, or even handling an estate through the probate court process? Anyone? Okay, just as an example, going back years, this is kind of dating my age just a little bit. It was a fellow attorney, and she had everything done, ready for the final closing of the estate. But there was this one bill that was accounted for through the estate. I think it was like $187.15 to this medical facility. So she had the invoice from the medical facility, $187.15. There were the statements on the bank statements. Paid, check number, whatever, paid to this facility for $187.15. This was back before it was just a standard thing. If you were writing checks, which not a lot of people do these days, they didn't have a photocopy. They actually sent back the canceled check. Well, they were missing the check. So the entire thing ground to a halt, and the clerk would not approve the final release of the estate because they were missing a copy of the canceled check. So she had to go back to the bank, pay $5, which screwed up all of the accounting, and they had to redo the inventory to get this canceled check. Okay, this is the type of minutia paperwork that people shouldn't need to bother with. But these court processes are in place supposedly to protect you, but the paperwork becomes so finite. It's like, okay, that's kind of what you're dealing with here. Now, there is this other capacity that's people don't really understand or know much about, testamentary capacity. You can be legally declared incompetent, but you can still execute your own power of attorney, last will and testament, and other documents as long as you know who you are, who, quote, the natural heirs of your bounty are, your family members, or in particular your kids, what the document is supposed to do, and you understand what that document does. That's enough to execute those documents and put someone else in charge. So these are those different capacities. It's not all at once. But the problem is if you don't put things in place ahead of time, it's right here, and it goes right into guardianship. All right, so any questions on any of that stuff? I don't deal with guardianships. That's just not what I prefer to do. But from what I understand, it's not a pleasant process, and certainly the accounting every year or more frequently is not something we want to necessarily do. Now, when it comes to HD, this is where sometimes it has to be even more aware of what's going on and what the options are, because someone can enter what I call, I don't know medically if there's a specific term for it, the reckless phase. It's highlighted by impulsivity, poor judgment, hypersexuality, excessive spending, and a vulnerability out there for scams and other things. I've heard a lot of stories. It's, well, here's my new best friend that I met a week ago. Well, they need a car, and I've got $40,000, so okay, I'm gonna buy them a car. Long term, that does not help you. And the other big impact when I see things like that, if you're on a path where Medicaid might have to take over and pay long-term care bills, that's a gift within the last 5 years that you also have to deal with, to the point where a Medicaid caseworker may just deny Medicaid because you've got this gift, and now suddenly you've got to hire an attorney to go to court and try to get it overturned and get a judge to make an exception because it wasn't something, they didn't give it as a gift consciously, knowingly, and understanding what the rules are. How can we cut that out? How can we make things so that it doesn't have to get to the point where you gotta go to court or it's an all or nothing? One of the things that I've developed the language for, and I'm sure I'm not the only attorney who did this. In this whole world of difference, right in here, documentation, anything outside of a revocable living trust, or in fact, any kind of trust, this is where the law says, okay, are you competent or you're not? And you can manipulate and sell your house, sell your stocks, give away money. As long as you are legally competent, you can do that. Well, all right, well, what about something like a power of attorney? A power of attorney doesn't change your ability to do things. Even if you're empowering someone else to go in and do banking for you, it doesn't say, I'm giving up my right. Where can we do that? If we move the house, stocks, bank accounts, vehicles, you put that stuff in the trust, now suddenly, how is this trust governed? According to the document. So you can put in, I'm going to be the trustor setting up my own trust. I'm the trustee running my own trust. I'm the beneficiary running, this trust is for me as I'm setting this up. But if two doctors just certify in writing, not that I'm incompetent, but that I've entered that reckless phase, it's going to turn the power over to my next listed trustee. And now suddenly it doesn't matter if a court declares you're incompetent or incapacitated. It doesn't matter that you still have all of these rights to do things with your property. You've decided when you were fine, this is when I want a trustee to take over, and now all of that's protected. Just a point, IRAs and 401ks, yeah, you can take those and move those into your revocable trust, except, and it's a big except, it's treated as a withdrawal, so you got to deal with whatever the taxes are. But if it's, okay, we're at a point where we really just need to do this, we're going to suck it up, we're going to pay the taxes and put the rest in there, at that point, it's protected. So another case that I'm working on now, woman. I worked with her and her husband. Gosh, it's got to be almost 20 years that I've been working with them. He passed on about 9 or 10 years ago. I've been working with her as the widow, but now she's in her 90s. And I got a call from the financial advisor that we kind of team up and work with her. Yeah, Jeff, I think you need to talk to her and her daughter. About 4 months ago, she asked for some money out of her investment accounts. And it was supposed to be for some investment. It was $50,000. Well, what was it actually? Oh, there's this nice young man, he works for this nonprofit, and this is an investment that I'm making, but there's all this money that's going to be going to this nonprofit, and it's $50,000. I think I can invest it. No, it was 100% a scam. So she lost $50,000. The advisor was calling me because she had requested another $120,000 to invest in something different for that nice young man. And that's when the daughter got involved. We set it up so that now it's not mom giving up total control. Hey, we just put everything that we can in here, and we can make the daughter an active co-trustee, and so that anybody that has to come out of the trust requires both of their signatures, and now they can talk about it and see, is this something where she really does need the money taken out or not, and does it make sense? So the daughter's in there as a safeguard, but it's also not saying, Mom, you have no power or ability to do anything. There may come a point where we do have to do that, but it's not now, even though she's in her 90s. So this type of setup and putting in whatever your level of capacity is, you can create that and have that put into, and like I said, I have some specific language that I'm using with my clients who do have HD. They see what might be coming down the road. It's already in there, knowing if they start to enter that phase, the doctors can just have the notes and it goes down to the next trustee. All right. Any questions so far?
I've got a quick question.
Yes.
Does it make sense, we're brand new to this, my wife became positive as of about 6 months ago, we got the news. As it stands now, all the vehicles save one are in my name's on the title. Stock portfolio is mine. Bank accounts are all joint. Like, we don't have any separate financial things other than like Venmo, right? Which I don't care about $200 or whatever it is. It's in the Venmo account. Would it make sense moving forward, because we're going to buy a new car soon? We have a POA on her car now because her father was a co-signer when we bought that car. Does it make sense when we buy her a new car in the next year or so to go ahead and have that car be in my name just off the jump? Because obviously we don't know what progression of this is going to look like, or where she's going to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, etc. Does it make sense to go ahead and sort of more organically move some of those things my direction, as opposed to a revocable trust is something we're obviously interested in looking at. We're not ready to make those moves, so let's say we buy a car next week. Does it make sense to just go ahead and put that in my name, just to avoid any of that down the line? Because I'm assuming if it's if my name's on the title, even though it's her car, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's mine according to the law. Is that correct?
Right. Okay, that is.
And this would, of course, go with any other bit of this too. Just cars are the thing that are on our mind at the moment. So.
Yeah, you're definitely correct. Yeah, you should look at this. We'll talk a little bit more about if we're going even further, protecting things from Medicaid and talking about irrevocable trusts. But anytime there are spouses, if it's all titled in your name, she can't, like I said, get into that irresponsible phase and give away the car to someone. She can't retitle it. that's not a bad stopgap measure until you get to that point. So that does kind of make sense.
Excellent.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about some very basic documents before we talk more about this. And I think, Erica, you can just start yelling and screaming at me if I'm coming up on time, because I'm just kind of flowing right now. All right, so what about the last will and testament? Everybody knows about the last will and testament. How many people here have had an attorney tell you you need a last will and testament and this is the end all be all? Okay. A last will and testament is basically saying to a court, hey, court, when I die, here's where everything goes, and I want to go have my estate go into that process where everything is categorized and you have the inventories and you have to have the copies of the canceled check and all that other stuff. There are attorneys who love that. Well, why do they love that? Because they're the ones getting paid to understand the paperwork and run it through the court process. They make more money on the back end. I hate that stuff. My whole career kind of went in this direction when I saw the crap that my grandmother had to go through when my grandfather died just for a couple of assets to go through probate. I'm like, this was when I was in law school and I started looking at things like a trust. But the other thing with a will, it only kicks in after you're gone. So anything related to, well, how do I want things to be handled financially if I end up getting sick? None of that is in the will. Well, wait a minute. Isn't there a power of attorney? Well, yeah. There are two main kinds. The durable general power of attorney is usually the kind of very specific one, but just to keep it basic, it's financial. What can I do if I become incapacitated, or if I just want to appoint someone to handle things, whether I'm incapacitated or not? They can use this power of attorney and work with my accounts and work with other things. They can sign paperwork or work with Social Security or whatever on my behalf. That's a financial power of attorney. Then there's a healthcare power of attorney, and that's where they're just making health and medical decisions on your behalf. Now, here's the big distinction. With a financial power of attorney, you can empower someone now to do things for you, and it's not taking away any of your rights to do anything on your own, and you can cancel the power of attorney or whatever. On the healthcare power of attorney, they can never make a decision for you if you're capable and able to do it yourself. So that does not override things. The only thing where a healthcare power of attorney, while you're still able to make your own decisions, helps out with, if it's got the right language, it can help them get the medical records and still get briefed by the doctors and see things and then talk with you about it. But honestly, those two documents, this is something that every single adult should have. In fact, this is kind of the time of year I start getting some calls from my clients. I can't believe this just happened. I've been going and taking my kid to the same pediatrician for 18 years, and now I need to get their records to send on to the school, and suddenly they won't give me anything. And that's when they realize, hey, there's a lot of stuff, even though your kid's going away to college, that you are not going to be able to do with them. You can't do the banking for them. You can't do healthcare decisions. You can't do any of this other stuff, and you can't get the medical information because they turned 18, they're an adult. So we end up doing a lot of financial and healthcare power of attorney documents for the children of our clients as they're turning 18. So again, these are the documents that everyone should have. But now we're getting a little bit more into the advanced stuff. And this is where, like I said, my point with the revocable trust is you can have assets go into the trust, keep control yourself, but then have these triggers set up. Yes?
Since we're talking about healthcare or power of attorneys, is that something you can just go online and do? Or are there like ways you should think about how you find these documents and how you get them done? Like, does Google's the only account that's a good durable power of attorney?
Okay, let me put it this way. You get what you pay for. And do you really just believe the website? I'm not trying to specifically knock any particular service, but I know LegalZoom makes money two specific ways, and one is the documents, and they have the computer system. It asks you the questions and it runs you through it, and then it spits out the document. They also make a ton of money. Here's our attorney referral list when things blow up. And I have talked with other attorneys who are like, oh, here's a disgruntled beneficiary who wants to challenge the will, and they go, oh, it's a LegalZoom will? I got a winner. And it's because there's usually something that goes wrong. It's just these small things that could invalidate a document, or it's done incorrectly. Story, and it has nothing to do with, oh, well, the average person just doesn't know, or they're not smart enough. 2 PhDs, clients of mine, doctors, they said, here's some documents, and they said, that another attorney put together for us. And I started going through the will, and I said, okay, did you mean to disinherit each other and give everything directly to the kids? So if one of you passes on, your spouse is cut out? Oh no, that's not what we meant. Okay. Did you mean to make your brother the first executor and you meant to make your sister the first executive and not each other? Oh no, that's not what we wanted. Okay. Do you want your kids to get everything at age 18 if both of you go? Oh no, that's way too young. Okay, got to the last page. They had signed their own wills, and they had witnessed each other's wills, which you're not allowed to do. And the second witness spot was blank, and I said, don't worry about it. You don't have any plan at all. That's a danger of these documents. Sometimes they're just not even executed properly. Yes, David.
I've worked with Jeff for a few years, and I'll tell you a couple of things. There is no average, ordinary circumstance, and the stories can go on and on and on with the little minutia that you miss. But money is an issue, and you certainly, the range that you can pay for the basic estate package of a will is a big range. Jeff did mention earlier today that because of the relationship that his office has with HD Reach, you've got this a great package, I think, but you mentioned that.
I will definitely get to that towards the end. About how much time we got left? Okay, good. Okay. All right, so the revocable trust, this is what I do an awful lot of in my practice, and a lot of people seek me out specifically because I try to set things up to avoid probate. I hear this from marketing people all the time. It's like, oh, what's your target base? And they're looking for ages, they're looking for wealth, or whatever. It's anyone who has had a loved one who's died and they've seen what a mess probate can cause. Doesn't matter how old they are, how young they are, what health. They've seen a disaster that probate has caused, and they want their family to avoid it. And so we moved more towards this. But this is a setup where you're setting it up, you're the trustee initially, you're the beneficiary, you're keeping all of that control. And then, like I said, in the document, it's going to discuss under what conditions are you turning over the keys voluntarily yourself. Sometimes it's the standard, like I mentioned, if you enter that phase where you're going to be doing potentially things irresponsibly and 2 doctors diagnose that, okay. In other cases, it's, okay, the doctors determined that I don't have the capacity to do all the financial functions of being a trustee. Okay, that's a different standard, but we can put it in there. Meanwhile, until that, you're keeping control over everything that's inside the trust, so it's not giving up any of that control at that point. But when you do pass on everything in the trust, it's completely exempt from probate. It doesn't have to go on the inventories. It doesn't have to have all of this accounting and all the other stuff. It avoids it, and then your trustee can distribute the assets to the beneficiary the way you want. Any questions on that before I start getting into the irrevocable trusts and what they can do? And we may even have some questions for David. Oh, by the way, this is David Cole. He is the lead person on our care team, so anytime we have any cases dealing with Medicaid and skilled nursing care, or even more, anything dealing with veterans benefits we team up with David because him and his office and his team is integral to making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed on the paperwork to get whatever those benefits are. But any questions on the revocable end of things for now? Okay, if you do, I put out some of the cards. These are kind of my new business cards. See the little QR codes. One is for estate planning, which talks about revocable trusts. The other one takes you to a free course on Medicaid and long-term care planning, and it's just got good free resources on there, and we'll make sure everybody gets one of those. So now, what about irrevocable trusts? How many people here have looked into this very intentionally confusing area of Medicaid paying for long-term care? Okay. There are so many rules, and I can tell you these rules, these exceptions, all of these fine points, this works, this sounds like it's the same thing, but it isn't. All of that is in place so that the government can say, we're not going to just throw you out on the street to die if you need long-term care. But if you want to keep as much as possible, it's so confusing, you're just going to throw up your hands and spend everything down. So the government isn't on the hook until you are dead broke. There are ways around it. Now, this is really, we call this the two-trust solution, even though there's a couple of more specialty trusts that we put in. And this is, again, just one way of getting it. This is the cleanest one I can describe. If you take all of the real estate you want to protect and you move it into this irrevocable property trust, and you take all of the money and other assets you want to protect and move it into this irrevocable family trust, 5 years after you move it in, it's completely off Medicaid's radar. Oh, well, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, hang on a minute, because these have different rules than the revocable one. You cannot be the trustee of your own trust starting out. This is handing over the keys right now for anything that you're putting in here. This is going to protect the property. It's going to have certain tax rules and benefits down the road. You can still live in the property. That's not a problem. Can I demand money out of this trust? No. We set it up so that your most trusted person in the world is technically the beneficiary. So they can take the money out, put it in their own pocket, and then turn around and pay for things for you. Can they say no? Yeah. Can they take that money and run? Yeah. You really have to trust them. And I hear this all the time. Oh, I'm never going to do that. When you start looking at the fact that for some skilled nursing facilities, $8,000 to $12,000 a month or more, suddenly the calculations start looking a little different. But the vast majority of my clients, when they're fine, they don't want to jump to doing this type of setup. But it does work. So once it's in, 5 years later, again, it's completely off of Medicaid's radar. It's as if you never owned it. You don't have to declare it. But all of that is still there for you through your trustee, and then for your family after you're gone. But with that understanding, there are also a whole lot of other potential rules that David and I are both well versed on. And now this is where, okay, I know this is going to be going out all over the place, right? Okay. Do not repeat this to anyone outside of North Carolina, because it only works in a couple of states. But there was a case where it was two of my clients, it was her mother. She was already in a care facility, but it was memory care and it was minimal care. I think she had one medication a day that she just needed someone to say, here, you need to take this now. She could feed herself, dress herself. She didn't have any other care that she could get out of bed and take care of things. It's just you couldn't open the front door or she'd end up walking out and getting lost. Okay. between what she had in her pension, a survivor's pension from her husband, and what she was getting for Social Security. And I think there was even an annuity that got turned on. It was only draining about $6,000 a year from what she had. And when she sold her house, and between that and, she had about $340,000 in the bank, and she had a life insurance policy with a $60,000 cash value. All right, that kind of becomes a little important because that's $400,000 according to Medicaid. All right, so what would happen if they went to Medicaid and said, hey, if things are getting worse, we need her to qualify? Medicaid would have said, well, you can only have up to $2,000. Spend $398,000 and then come back to us. Well, wait a minute. What can we do? Well, again, $340,000, $60,000 cash value in a life insurance policy, and I think this was right. It was about a $400,000 death benefit. I don't know if you can get that anymore, but the way she had it all set up, well, why $400,000? Because she had 4 kids, and she wanted to make sure each kid got $100,000 no matter what. But okay, that's $400,000. What can we do? And this is the part where it doesn't work in every state. I asked the daughter and son-in-law, my clients, do you own a house? Well, yeah, and I knew the answer. What's that worth? Oh, it's about $500,000, and it's paid off. Okay. Mom's allowed to have a primary residence. Okay. We can set it up so mom is going to buy 80% of your house. Daughter, you're going to have 10%. Son-in-law, you're going to have 10%. And that's 100%. And the 3 of you are going to own it as joint with the right of survivorship. But she's actually going to buy it. And this is, again, the part that doesn't work in every state. Well, wait a minute. Does this mean we're going to lose that life insurance policy? Well, no. Here's where we get to another rule from Medicaid. The value of a life insurance policy is what the cash value is. So the son-in-law buys the policy from his mother-in-law for $60,000. So now it's actually $400,000 in cash. She buys 80%. We have the contract, we have the deed, we copy the checks. And now the daughter and the son-in-law have $400,000. Well, what are they looking at with that $400,000? Morally, this is mom's money. Morally, it's hers. I know we sold part of our house, but morally, it's mom's. They put the $400,000 into the family trust. Because it wasn't mom putting in there, there's no 5-year look back. And so now, the daughter's the trustee. We mirrored mom's power of attorney. So the daughter's the trustee. I think it was a son was the second, and then another daughter was the third. And we put into the trust her exact estate plan, which was everything gets divided among the 4 kids when we pass on. All right, so what's the first transaction that we make with that $400,000 that's in there? The daughter buys the policy back from her husband and moves it into the trust. Within a couple of months, we filtered everything through, and now, financially, she's ready to get to that point for Medicaid. So we just had to monitor her health and make sure if it was getting to the point where she needed skilled nursing care, it would have been taken care of. With those type of rules that are in place, it kind of makes sense to work with people like me and David, but it doesn't mean I got to give up control of everything, give up the keys completely 5 years ahead of time, as long as you've got a plan on how this is going to be addressed and how that handoff is going to happen. So that's just one case. Every single case is different. Any questions before I kind of get to that last offer that David was mentioning? Okay. We're going to talk about boats because I took the time to actually draw this out. Imagine you're living your life, everything is fine, and then bang, right away, You're in the middle of the ocean and you're treading water. Here's a boat that's right there. You can swim to that boat. They're going to charge you a fee, and they're going to take you to this island. And on this island, you're going to have any kind of food you want, any kind of drink you want. You're going to have a house. You're going to be fine. It's just they don't have all that much in terms. They've got like one news station and a couple of tracks. It's not a lot to do, but you're going to be fine. You can go to this second boat. It's going to take you to another island. On that island, yeah, you're going to have your basic shelter and whatever, but the food is the blandest stuff you've ever experienced. But every kind of entertainment and exercise, it's all there. Okay, we've got this third boat. This is going to be a much longer journey. It's going to cost more. But when you finally get to that island, it's going to have all the food you could ever want. It's all going to taste good. It's got all the entertainment and whatnot. Which boat do you pick? Here's the problem. Most people take so long to decide, or they just don't decide, that they drown, and they never pick one. All right. The offer we have, we can give you this life raft, this ring that's going to take care of you. We are offering, and this is for a limited time only, it's only for HD people, and this is where I actually cut it out on my video that's going up on YouTube. The first step, estate planning. If you want the 5 basic documents, a very simple process: will, healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney, living will, nomination of conservator, and if you've got kids or adult children that you're officially guardians of, we can throw that into. There's an online process. You fill out the paperwork, send it to us. It's half price from what we usually charge for that simple package. It's $500. You get all that stuff. No, we're not going to sit down and discuss it first. No, we're not going to say, well, can we do the trust with that? No. It's the basic documents, using that process. It's your life preserver. And then, okay, now we can potentially talk about which of these plans and which of these processes is going to get you where you need to go down the road, but at least it's something that's in place. This is only going to be available until May 15, so just go ahead, take a look, see if it's something that you're interested in. But yeah, we're trying to do this just so that you've got those basic documents in place, and at least that part of it is covered. All right. We've got a few more minutes. We just open it up to whatever questions.
At what point would they look at these courses?
Anytime you want.
Before doing the program, the special program, you wanted to watch that first?
They don't have to, but they can. The 2 programs that I mentioned, and you can even go to the website. One is freetrustcourse.com. It sounds kind of fancy. It's a course. No, it's my book, Estate Planning Basics, that walks through the difference between a will and a trust and what's probate and how does all that stuff work and what are the big decisions you need to make and how do you fund your trust. All of that is in there, and it's kind of condensed, and I promise it's in plain English. It's going to walk you through that. What I can tell you is whether you decide you want to do a will or a trust, you can't read that book and not come out on the other end and know which of the 2 directions. It's either I care a lot about probate being a process that my family has to go through, or it's not a big deal. And either way is fine. It just depends on what your goals are. There is no one correct answer between the 2, but you're going to know which direction you want to go. The other one is free Medicaid course. And now this discusses a lot of the rules around Medicaid, particularly the big ones that are misunderstood. It talks about the irrevocable trusts, what they do, how they function within the toolbox. And it's just going to prepare you to have the discussion, wait a minute, is this something that we're ready to do, or is this something that's coming down the road? What's going to be the best way to handle it? So it's going to give you information. And either way, it's all free. thank you for that. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you ever talk with families about pooled trusts? Like, do you know much about pooled trusts in North Carolina? Or is it just
Strictly
like,
New
it's
York.
like through nonprofits, and so I don't know if that ever comes up for you.
It hardly ever comes up. And it's mainly because when my clients are coming to me, this is what I want of mine to preserve for the people I want to. And these are the resources. Or I don't have a lot of resources, but I want to keep for me as much as possible and have it go. And we're talking more about how do we qualify for Medicaid or other programs. But yeah, pooled trusts don't come up all that much. I do have a lot of clients who don't like anyone in their family and just want to leave stuff to charity at the end. My clients are perfectly fine. They're nice, lovely people, but apparently their families aren't, and that's fine. Yes?
Question, so if you don't own the home, so you still got a mortgage on it, still owe for it, can you still do one of the trusts? Or
The irrevocable property trust. If the mortgage company ever finds out you move that into an irrevocable trust, they're going to call your mortgage due right away. That's just the fact of it. And I actually spent a couple of years trying to figure out, well, why can't the mortgage company at least like refinance, have the trustee sign off on the paperwork? It took 3 gin and tonics for a mortgage company manager to finally tell me, he said, hey, you remember all that stuff with those risky mortgages that people pulled together and sold and the high-risk ones and it collapsed the whole economy? Yeah. These mortgage companies want to be able to do it again, if they want. And they can't do that with irrevocable trusts. It's too much trouble. But this is also why a lot of mortgage companies tend to handle and manage 100% of the mortgages they write, or 100% of the mortgages they write, they're immediately going to sell off to some other mortgage company and they're going to service it. But that was the reason I finally got out of them. There are no mortgage companies who want to deal with irrevocable trusts. So, good question.
So as far as the house is concerned, I mean, again, it doesn't matter in our case, through a paperwork error at the mortgage company, it's my house, not our house. So we don't have that problem, but would it make sense if you are still under a mortgage to go ahead and go through whatever process it would be if both of you are on a mortgage to change that to the caregiver?
That is,
the sole owner. I mean, is it worth even doing that?
that is much more of an individualized question because it also, okay, how are you going to pay this off? What other assets do you have? How much liquidity do you need? How is this going to impact your life? There is no one answer for that. And in fact, for a lot of my clients, it's, hey, we've got maybe $5,000 in the checking account, the house, which has a mortgage, and all of the rest of our wealth is in IRAs and 401ks. And it's like, okay, well, if you want to take money out of the IRAs and 401ks to pay off the mortgage, now suddenly you're talking about a whole bunch of income taxes all at once. And so we got to take a look. Can we spread this out over a couple of years? Again, very individualized, no one specific answer. All right, any other questions? Are we done?
We're done.
We are done. Okay, well, I will stick around for a little bit if you have any additional questions, although you're probably going to kick me out because you've got the next session in here, right?
15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay. Thank you very much for attending. Please make sure you take a card and get the free information.